I'm not gonna lie. My tiny house is, well, tiny. Um, but it doesn't feel small. Now, if you are living in a small space and you feel that it feels like a small space, or if you're thinking about living in a tiny house or a small house and you're worried that it will feel small, keep watching, because I'm going to share with you 5 tips for making a tiny space feel spacious. So what brought this on, this, the idea of this topic, was that a few weeks ago I had lunch with some people that I know, and it was in a restaurant that was just a few 100 meters down the road. And then this group of women knows me as the tiny house lady. So when we were done, I said, oh, if any of you are interested in having a sticky beak, you're very welcome to come and have a look at my tiny house. So they did. And we ended up being 5 adult women in this space. And it was interesting because as we walked up, they sort of went, oh, so cute, and yeah, oh gosh, it is small, isn't it? And those sorts of comments. And then we walked into the house, and all of them really sort of went, gosh, it just doesn't feel small. It feels much bigger than it looks from the outside. And I feel that way every time I walk up and then walk into the house, whereas it looks so much smaller from the outside than it does from the inside. And reflecting on why that might be, and what I've learned in the almost 2 years that I've now lived in the tiny house, I've come up with 5 things or 5 tips that I have that help you make a space feel more spacious. And they're not all potentially what you might expect. Well, it was certainly not some of the things were definitely not what I expected. There's definitely tip 4 and 5 were a surprise to me. So wait, make sure that you make it till the end to hear what tip 4 and 5 are. So the first tip is to think in your design what makes you feel that a space is spacious. Now, I have to say, I'm not an interior designer. And if there's anybody out here, any of you that are, I would love to hear your thoughts on what I'm about to share. But when I designed my house, I knew that light was really important to me, but for my mood. So I found that I was living in a house that was really quite dark, and so I knew that I wanted a space that felt really light, because I could feel the difference in my mood and in my energy levels when I came to the house that was really dark, as opposed to being in other spaces where there was lots of light. That's why all my walls are white, my ceiling is white, almost all the furniture and the cabinets are white, except for my dining table. So that was one thing, to have that everything was white. So it feels to me like the walls and the cupboards and everything disappears from view. It all kind of blends in, which makes it not visible to me, and that creates for me space. And the other part of it is the size and the number of windows that I have. I have them because I wanted as much light coming into the house, as much natural light, but I also find that it helps to increase the sense of space. And the moment that really becomes clear is in the evening when it gets dark, and especially if I don't put the blinds down, because my blinds are white. If I don't put them down and I let it go dark outside before I pull down the blinds, it starts to feel smaller. I don't mind that at night because it's nice and cozy, but on the whole, I can definitely feel the difference. So, not purposely designed to create more space, but I can definitely feel that the lightness of everything makes it feel much more spacious. So that's the first tip, is think about your design, think about what for you is important to make that, to create that sense of space. Now I know some people say that dark walls make them recede. Probably because it affects my mood quite a bit. So for me, that doesn't feel that way. So for me, light walls and lots of light coming in through the windows really creates more space. Let me know if you feel that way too, or if you feel other colors or other ways of creating the inside of the space makes you feel like it's a larger space. But I think tip one would be, consider that. What creates for you that sense of space so that you can design it into your house. Second tip has to do with surfaces, and in particular things like the kitchen bench, the dining table, and the floor. And this definitely comes from having lived here for almost 2 years and experiencing the difference between having empty surfaces and having things on surfaces. Let me explain. So what I found is that if you have surfaces like the kitchen bench top and the dining table and even the floor, if you can see things that are on those surfaces, to me that creates a smaller space. When I first moved in, I have a Thermomix, and I used a Thermomix a lot when my daughter was still living with me to make quick and easy meals. And the Thermomix was living on the kitchen bench in the corner where you just underneath the knives. And the Thermomix is white, but I still felt, and yes, it took up space on the bench top, so that created a sense of less space. But also just looking at the kitchen, to me it felt like the kitchen shrunk. And then now it lives in a cupboard because I still use it on occasion, but not as much as I used to. So now I have the kitchen bench, has virtually nothing on it except my coffee machine and the kettle, because I use those every day. The other thing that I initially did, if you remember from the video, the kitchen tour, I had a small dishwasher, which worked well when my daughter was here because of the amount of dirty dishes we produced between the two of us. But it was great because, as soon as you had a dirty dish, you put it in the dishwasher and it's out of sight. But because I really don't have use for a dishwasher, I can't fill it enough to actually run it before I run out of cutlery and crockery and plates and what have you. So I've removed the dishwasher. But now I have dirty dishes in my kitchen. So what I need to do to keep that sense of space is put the dirty dishes in the sink. And then, and when I start to see it, well, you can't see it at the moment, but there's a plate and there's a cup and there's some things in the sink. And then when it gets to a point where I can actually see it, I do the dishes, and I don't let them dry on the kitchen bench. I dry them off with a tea towel and put them away straight away. And that really gives me that sense of space in the kitchen. Something similar with my dining table. I don't know about you, but dining tables, it's like they scream, put things on me, put things on me. When I have done my grocery shopping or I've brought in the washing from outside, I put it initially on the table, and it's so tempting. And mail, right? Mail comes, I don't get a lot of mail, but still get some mail. Put it on the dining table. And I know that in the house that I lived in, when I still had the double-sized table, it was never empty. It was because it was such a great place to put things, but then they stayed there. And here that would create a real sense of smallness around that area. So I have to be really diligent to when the washing gets brought in, I fold it and it gets put away straight away. If I have done the grocery shopping, it needs to be put away straight away. Mail, not allowed to stay anywhere where it's visual, where I can see it. So I either have to deal with it straight away, or I have to put it somewhere where I can't see it all the time. And of course, that's the problem with a space like this, where I can see my kitchen from just, well, not from my own loft, but from basically every part of the house. So if there's lots of stuff there and the kitchen feels small, then the house feels small. Same with the dining table. And then the third surface that I find is really important to keep open and empty is the floor. I even find that if it is it has stuff on the floor, and what I mean by that is as you know, I have a cat, Oreo, and she's an indoor cat, so her cat litter is inside, and I use wood shavings for the cat litter. Even though there's a little mat in front of a litter box that should catch most of it, she still walks wood shavings a little bit around the house. She's got a cardboard scratch post that creates little stuff. And if it's a bit windy, then leaves from outside get blown inside. And even that sort of debris on the floor makes it, for me, feels smaller. So I sweep the floor every day. Once a day, sweep the floor, vacuum it a couple of times a week. If it's very windy and I've had thick doors open, I even sweep it twice. Because having a clear floor makes it feel, for me, bigger. So that's the second tip. It's about having surfaces that have nothing on it. Doesn't mean that every surface needs to be completely empty, but bigger surfaces, if they are, for me, if they are empty, there's nothing on them or hardly anything on them, that creates that sense of space. So it's a very visual visual thing. I mean, that might be just me. Sorry, I might just have hit the microphone there. Sorry. Tip 3. I found that as long as I have a easy walking line, so I can easily walk from here, I'm in my living room at the moment, all the way to the bathroom, and without having to walk around anything. And there's floor space that I can see that makes it feel more spacious as well. This is why I don't have a coffee table, no matter how small, because it would mean that around here I need to maneuver around it, and that would not feel as spacious. I had in the previous house, I had in the living room, I had a coffee table and then 2 couches facing each other, and just walking through always felt really cramped, and I think that sense of it feels cramped makes it feel small. So that's why I don't have a coffee table. Okay, so now tip 4 and 5 are a little bit, when I thought about it, I thought I'd never thought about this, but they are really important for me to create this sense of space in the house. And that is the first. So tip 4 is to make sure that you are able to see the outside from some key places in the house. And for me, that is to see nature. And by being able to see the outside, it's almost like the inside of the house gets extended out. So the outside, you know, you often hear people say, "Oh, bringing the outside in," and it's kind of like that. Definitely visually. So I love that I can. So where I sit on the couch, I can look out and I see just trees, and not just trees right in front of my house, but as you can see from the photo, I can also see trees quite far in the distance on the other side of the field. And by seeing that, even though it's not part of my house, it feels like all of a sudden the house is extended to further out towards those trees. When I sit at my dining table, for example, this is what I can see. And again, I can see trees, but I can see in the distance without any interruption. And that, again, increases the sense of space. And then tip 5 is to actually bring in the outside, but in some unusual ways. First of all, the sound of the outside. I find that I have to have windows open, doors open as much as I can if the weather allows, to hear. I mean, it's summer in Australia, so we hear there's birds, and when it's warm, we hear cicadas. I have frogs that I can hear, but I need those sounds to come in, so I open the windows and I can hear those sounds. What makes my space feel small, and this is very, very likely to be a very me thing, is when I can hear people. But being able to hear the wind in the trees, the birds, as I said, the frogs and cicadas, but also by opening, and that's just sound, but also by opening the windows and doors to get a cross breeze, it's also that the feel of the breeze that makes it feel like I'm connected with the outside, and the outside is part of the house. And then with the smell, and I'd never thought about this, but in spring, for about 3 weeks, we have a lot of trees and shrubs that are blooming, and there's a specific smell with that. It's beautiful, and it really felt, it's like my house sort of, it's like it just expanded just because of that smell. I have a field on the outside of the back of the property, and the sound of the lawnmower, the person coming to mow the lawn, does not increase my sense of space. But afterwards, the smell of the lawn that's been mowed, so the grass smell does, where it's going, oh, it gives me a feeling I can breathe, and the easier I can breathe, the bigger the space feels. So that's my personal tip 5, is to bring in terms of smell and sound and feel the outside, because then that becomes sort of, it's like the walls disappear almost for a bit, and of course that creates more space. So some tips, probably a little bit more practical and a bit more recognizable than others, but you can make a small space feel much more spacious, and that's what I've learned over the last 2 years. It has very little to do with the actual space that you have. It's got to do, it's like almost like tricking your brain or making your brain think that it's bigger, and that's a visual thing. That has to do with ease of movement, and it has to do with smells and sounds, and those things that for you give you that sense of spaciousness. And for me, that is seeing nature, hearing nature, and not seeing people and not hearing people. But that's different for everyone, and I'm sure that there will be those of you watching that love being in the city and love the sound of the city, and that could well be something that helps you expand your space. I hope these tips were helpful. Even, let me know if there's something that you hadn't considered, and are going to give it a go, because that's the only way you can work out what makes your space feel more spacious. But it is definitely possible. So if you are worried about moving into a tiny house that the space will feel small, it doesn't have to be. It can feel very spacious if you can work out what that sense of spaciousness is determined for you. And you can probably work that out by where you live at the moment, by just going through and so what parts of my house feel spacious and what parts of my house don't feel spacious, and what's the difference in and going to previous places you've lived in, and have a think about how the use of space influences you or impacts you to make it to feel like it's a large space or to feel like it is really spacious, really cramped. Okay, next week, very different video. Next week I'm going to take you with me when we're not going anywhere, but I have two projects that I've been not umming and ahhing, but just sort of going, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. So I'm going to take you on those two projects. One is to put a door in the kitchen in front of the big hole where the dishwasher was, and that's going to be a bit fiddly because I wasn't able to get the exact right door, so we need to do some MacGyvering, probably, for those of you who remember the TV series MacGyver. And the other thing is to turn the cubes in my spare loft, which was my daughter's loft, around so I don't have to look at those ugly backs of the cubes, and be able to use the space for things. So that's what we're going to do next week.